Hey, and welcome back to another video. In this video, we're going to be setting up the boost code as well as the boost gauge. So with that, let's get started. The first thing I'm going to do is set up the input. Head over to inputs. Then in here, we're going to right click, input action. I'm going to call this IA underscore boost. Leave that as is. Then we're going to open up the IMC inputs. I'm going to create a new mapping. This is going to be the boost. And then I'm going to assign mine to the left alt button simply because the shift up and shift down are also on the left side of the keyboard. Then want to save, close that. Then want to save all. Then want to head over to content, widget, open world. And then you can either set it up in the HUD or in the gauges. I'm going to set it up in the gauges. You want to open up that, and then we'll come back to this later. Want to head over to the parent vehicle. And then before we do anything, we're going to add a new function. I'm going to call this set boost stats. And then in here, we're going to drag in the as BPGI gang, drag off. Then we're going to get BPS garage cars, drag off from there, get a reference, take the vehicle ID, drop that on the pin, drag off from there. We're going to break. Then we're going to expand everything. And then what we're going to look for is all the boost related variables. So the boost consumption, boost refill, boost decrease, boost refill, and then the boost max fuel. I'm going to take all of those, just drag off from there, and then promote each one to a variable, and then name it the same as the variable in the blueprint structure. So just going to drag off from the boost consumption rate and then click off so that it can remain named as is. I'm going to do the same for the boost refill rate. Drag off, promote to variable, then just make sure to connect the execution pins. The boost decrease delay, drag off, promote to variable. The boost refill delay, drag off, promote this to a variable. And then the last one is the boost max fuel, drag off from there, and then promote this to a variable as well. And then the last one is going to be the boost max fuel as well, which is going to drag off from here, promote this to a variable, but then this, we're going to rename this to just boost fuel. Going to need this as well. Connect the execution pin, select the brake, hide unconnected, and then drag all the variables up, connect the execution pin. So with that done, we're going to compile, save, head over to the event graph. On the configuration custom event, we're going to drop the new function we created, the set boost stats, drag this in, connect that. And then now while I was looking at the functions, I kind of noticed that we never did, or I never did, the setup for the wheels, tires, and the power or the torque. So let's do that also while we at it. So we're gonna head up to the functions, create a new function, then we're gonna call this one set torque stats, create another function, and call this set brake stats, and then the last one, I'm gonna call this set tires. What we're gonna do is we're gonna head over to the set brake stats, set boost stats, and then we're gonna copy the as BPGI game, BP garage cars, vehicle ID, and along with the get and the brake. So just select all of this. I'm gonna Control C, head over to the set torque stats, Control V, and then select the brake. And then the ones we want for the torque is the base torque along with the engine components, which in my case is going to be the pistons and the crankshaft because I'm only using two for the purpose of the tutorial. And then what you're going to do is you're going to take the base torque, drag off from there, look for multiply, and then you're going to add as many pins as the amount of components for the engine. And then you're going to connect each component to the multiply. So we're going to connect the pistons, going to connect the crankshaft, select the brake, going to hide unconnected, and then we're going to right click, and then we're going to look for get as chaos wheel vehicle movement component, drag off from there, and then we're going to look for set max engine torque, and then from the multiply, connect that to the torque, and then connect the execution pin, and then that's how you're going to do the engine torque. Going to compile, save, and then since we already have the piece of the code that we gonna need for the other functions, which is the as BPGI game all the way up to the break BPS vehicles. We already have that copied. We're just gonna head over to the next function, the set break stats. We're gonna control V, and then we're just gonna select the break, and then for the set brake stats, we're gonna use the front brakes, rear brakes, and then we're gonna scroll down until we get to the front brakes multiplier and the rear brakes multiplier. And then we're gonna do the same thing. So from the front brakes, drag off, look for multiply, and then you're gonna multiply this by the front brakes multiplier. Select the multiply, Control D, take the rear brakes, connect that to the second multiplier, and then you take the rear brakes multiplier, connect that to that multiplier. Select the brake, hard unconnected, right click, get as chaos wheeled vehicle movement component, drag off from there. And they're going to look for set max, no, not max, set brake torque, and then we need to assign a wheel index. So the front wheels are 0 and 1. So select the set brake torque, Control D, connect the execution pin, select both set brake torque nodes, Control D those ones, and then the last two, we're gonna set this to 2 and 3 for the rear, and then just set the second one to 1. So the front will take the first two, and then the rear will take the last two, and then we're gonna connect the execution pin, and then we're gonna add some redirect nodes to tidy things up a bit. And then also remember to connect the as chaos wheeled vehicle movement component to the other nodes as well. Just gonna drag this up above everything else. Then we're just gonna connect everything. So that's it for the brake stats. I'm gonna compile, and then just gonna select from the SBPG again to the brake BPS vehicles again. Control C, head over to the set tire stats, Control V, and then in here for the brake, we're gonna look for the front tires, rear tires, and then scroll down till we get to the front tires, rear tires multipliers. And then yet again, right click, get as chaos wheeled vehicle movement component. I'm gonna drag up from there, and then we're gonna look for set wheel friction multiplier. And then the same as what we do with the brakes, we need a wheel index. I'm gonna Control D. So the first two is 0 and 1. Select those two nodes, Control D, and then this is going to be 2 and 3 for the rear. Connect the execution pins, and then the same as we did with the brakes. From the front tire, drag off, multiply, connect the front tire multiplier to it. Select the multiplier, Control D, the rear tires, connect that to the second multiplier, and then the rear tires multiplier, connect that as well. And then just connect this to the appropriate node. Remember to connect the as chaos wheel vehicle movement component to each of the nodes as well. And then just select the brake, hide unconnected, and then we're going to compile, save, head over to the event graph, and then just connect all the functions to the configuration custom event. And then we're just going to compile, save, and then with that done, we can move on to the boost code. So find an empty spot somewhere. Then we're gonna right click and then look for the enhanced input action for the boost, and then just move this somewhere. And then we're gonna add a couple of custom events. So right click, look for custom event. Then the first one is increase boost. Right click again, another custom event. This one is decrease boost. Right click again, another custom event. This one is stop boost increase. Right click, another custom event. This is stop boost decrease. Yet another custom event. This is add force. And then the last custom event, this is reset force. So the first thing I'm going to do is the increase boost. So just make some space between the custom events. So what we're going to do is we're going to drag in some of the newly created variables. So the first thing I'm dragging in is the boost fuel. Hold control, drag it in. And then we're going to drag in the boost max fuel. Hold control, drag that in. from the boost fuel, drag off, look for less than, and then connect the boost max fuel to the bottom pin of the lesser than. Hold B, left click, create a branch, connect the execution pin, and then what we're going to do is we actually need to create a couple more variables. So we're just going to add more space in the custom event. So by the branch, drag this out a bit from the lesser than, drag off, and then we're going to look for and. We're going to add a pin, and then from the middle pin, we're going to drag off, and then we're going to promote this to a variable, and then we're going to call this is refilling question mark. And then from the bottom pin, we're going to drag off from there, and then we're going to look for not boolean, and then from the not boolean, we're going to drag off from that pin, promote that to a variable. Then we're going to call this is boost active question mark. And then from the end, we're going to connect this to the condition by the branch, and then we're going to select the is refilling. Just make sure it's going to compile first. Just make sure its default value is set to false. The same is for the is boost active. This needs to be set to false. Then we're going to select the boost fuel, Control D, and then we're going to drag in the boost refill rate, hold Control, drag that in. From the boost fuel, drag off, look for add, connect the boost refill rate to the add, and then from the add, drag off, and then we're going to set boost fuel, connect this to the true, and then we're going to drag in the boost refill delay, hold Control, drag this in, drag off from there, and then we'll look for a delay node, connect the execution pin, and then after the complete, we're going to drag off, and then we're going to look for increase boost custom event, and then that is it for the increase boost. So now we're going to do the decrease boost. So then we're going to select the boost fuel, Control D, then we're going to drag off from there, we're going to look for greater than, and then we're going to leave it at 0. And then we're also going to take the is boost active, Control D this as well, and then from the greater than, we're going to drag off and then look for and boolean, connect the is boost active to the and. Then we're going to hold B, left click, connect this to the condition, connect the execution pin, and then we're going to take the boost fuel, Control D, then we're going to take the boost consumption rate, hold Control, drag this in. From the boost fuel, drag off, look for subtract, connect the boost consumption rate, and then from the subtract, we're going to drag off, and then we're going to set boost fuel, connect this to the true, drag in the boost decrease delay, hold Control, drag this in, drag off from there, look for delay, connect the execution pin, and then on the completed, drag off, and then look for decrease boost, and then that is it for the decrease boost custom event. And then for the stop boost increase, we're just gonna drag in the is refilling, hold Alt, drag this in, and then connect the execution pin to that, and then that is it. And then for the stop boost decrease, we're gonna drag in the is boost active, hold Alt, drag this in, connect the execution pin, and then just leave it as false. I did this because I had a problem because these usually go in on the input action, but if I just added them as they were, it would kind of be like a hit or miss. So the way I found to get it to work consistently is by adding them to custom events and then adding the custom events to the button instead, or the input action instead of just putting the variables themselves on there. And then for the add force and reset force, we're just going to drag this out a bit. I should just drag it off to the side. By the add force, we're going to right click and then we're going to get mesh, roll all the way down, get the mesh, and then we're going to drag off from there. And then we're going to look for get physics linear velocity, connect the execution pin, drag this down a bit, and then by the components, we're going to select the vehicle movement component, hold Control, drag this in, drag off from there, and then we're going to look for the updated primitive, get updated primitive, drag off from there, and then we're gonna set physics linear velocity. And then from the get physics linear velocity, we're gonna drag off from there, look for a multiply. And then on the bottom pin, we're gonna right click, and then we're gonna change this to a float single precision. Gonna connect that to the new velocity pin under the target. Connect the execution pin. Okay, we need to reconvert this back to the float. And then for now, we're gonna set this to let's make it 1.4. And then that will be it for the add force. For the reset force, it's the same code, just altered a bit. We're just gonna select everything, Control D, add this to the reset force. And then by the multiply, instead of 1.4, we're gonna set this to 1. And then that is it for the reset force. And then now with all the custom events done, we can finally do the enhanced input action. So we're going to expand the input action, and then by the started, we're going to drag in the boost fuel, hold control, drag this in, drag off, and look for is it greater than 0. Then we're going to add a branch, hold B, left click, add the condition, connect this to the started, and then we're going to hold Alt, drag in the is boost active, connect it to the true. Going to set this to yes, it is active. Then we're gonna hold Alt, drag in the is refilling, connect that. We're gonna leave this to false because it's not currently refilling. And then we're gonna drag off from the is refilling set, drag off, and then we're gonna look for the add force custom event. And then from there, we're gonna drag off and then look for the stop boost increase event. And then from there, we're gonna drag off and then we're gonna look for the decrease boost custom event. And then that is it for the started. And then on the completed, we're gonna take the is boost active, select that, Control D, connect this to the completed, set this to false, drag off from there, and then look for the stop boost decrease custom event. Then we're gonna drag off from there and look for a delay. We're gonna leave it as is. I'll just make some space here, drag everything down a bit. Then we're gonna drag in the boost fuel, hold control, drag in the boost fuel. Then we're gonna drag in the boost max fuel as well, hold control, drag that in, drag off from the boost fuel, we're gonna look for less than, connect the boost max fuel, hold B, left click, create a branch, connect the condition, connect the execution pin. Then we're gonna take the is refilling, hold Alt, drag this in, connect that to the true, set it to true. Then we're gonna drag off from there, then look for the increase boost custom event, and then drag off from there, and then we'll look for the reset force custom event, and then that is it for the boost. Select the enhanced action, input action, and then just collapse that, and then that is the entire code for the boost system. So we're just gonna drag over everything, add a comment, and we're gonna call this boost system. Then we're gonna compile, save, head over to the widget. But before that, we need to add the material that's going to be used for the boost gauge. So I'm going to use the same as the material used for the digital. So if you want to know how to set that up, I'm going to leave a link down in the description or up in the cards. So I'm just going to do that real quick. This material, I'm going to call this M underscore boost. Gonna open this up, dock this to the top, and then there is going to be a slight difference between the one that I'm creating for the tutorial and the one in the digital. It's that if you select the percentage over here, if you move it, you can see it moves in an undesirable location because it goes from the top to the bottom, particularly if you're on the right side of the gauge. If you're gonna put it on the left side, so let's just move this, So for example, let's say it's on this side. So the gauge would be in the center, and then the boost meter is on the left of the gauge. If you animate the percentage, then this is what you would want. You'd want it to be at 100% over here, and then as you use it, it would decrease, decrease, decrease until it gets to 0, and then it refills again from bottom to top. But this doesn't exactly work for the way I want to set it up. I want to set it up on the right hand side of the gauge. So if you try and put it on the right hand side, which would be on this side, then if you try and animate it now, it's going to go from top to bottom, which is not what you want, right? So to fix this, after the vector to radial value between here and the add, you're just going to select everything here, move this out the way, and then from here, just drag off, and then you want to look for a 1 minus, and then connect that to the add. So now I'm just going to move this variable yet again, just put it on this side, so that's on the right hand side. And then if you select the percentage now and we animate it, now we can see that it does animate from bottom to top or top to bottom. So when it's full, it's at the top. As you use it, it's going to decrease, decrease, decrease until it hits 0. And then it refills again like that. So that is what I want. And if it's the same for you, you're going to use up this setup. It's exactly the same as the digital. The only difference is after the vector to radial value, before you add it to the scalar value that we're going to animate, you need to add a 1 minus so that you can effectively flip it. And then that is how you get the same result. So I'm just going to change this from red, thinking let's go with like a blue. Go full blue. And then I'm going to apply this. So we're going to go over to the gauges, and then in here we're going to add a new image, or you can just select one of the current images. Also, another thing to note is we need to add this or create this as a material instance. We're going to right click, material instance, select the material instance, and then we're going to select the percentage to expose it. Just close everything. Then just select one of these. I'm going to control D, F2, call this boost, and then I'm going to select the MI boost. Gauges, set that as the image, and then you're going to need to do some tweaking to get the boost to sit exactly the way you want it. As you can see, for me, it's kind of overlapping with the gauges, so I'm going to make some changes real quick. Also, one thing to note is please do take notice of where your percentage is, or the max where you want it to stop, because that is the value that you're going to be using to determine when the value for the max boost is supposed to stop. Close that. Then we're gonna compile, save. We're gonna head over to the graph. We're going to create a new function. We're gonna call this boost gauge, and then we're pretty much going to do the same thing as we did with the gauges. So we can just copy the same code, Control C, Control V, and then just swap out the relevant information. So we're gonna remove the MI10K, switch this out by the parent. We're looking for the boost, the MI boost, remove the set from the return, drag off, promote this to a variable, call this MI boost, connect this to the material, connect the execution pin, head over to the designer real quick. We did rename this to boost. Okay, it's fine. Then we just need to find where it is, compile, there it is, select that, drop that on there. Then we'll take the MI boost, switch that with the MI 10K, connect this also to the is valid, the MI boost. And then for the code by the break, this is going to be different. By the set scalar parameter, we need to change this to the percentage. And then we're going to head over to the event graph real quick. And then before the load max RPM, just select all of that. And then just drag this out. We're going to right click, going to get player pawn. We're going to drag off from there. And we're going to pass to the parent vehicle. Miss the BP tutorial. Then we're going to promote this to a variable. Then we connect this to the load max RPM. Then in the boost gauge, Instead of this, we're gonna take all of this and then just remove all that. Compile. Gonna select the parent vehicle variable, hold control, drag that in, and then from there we're gonna drag off and we're gonna get the boost fuel, connect that to the value by the map range clamped, and then the in range A is gonna be 0, in range B is gonna be 100, or it would be if you're going to upgrade your max boost fuel. So that would be the other variable. So we're gonna get boost. So if you're upgrading your get boost max fuel in the upgrade, then instead of 100, you would take the boost max fuel and then connect this in here like this. So we go from 0 to whatever your boost max fuel value is as you go through your upgrade stages. But for me, I'm not upgrading the boost max fuel. I'm simply just leaving it at 100. So it's fine if I just leave it at 100. And then the outrange A is 0. And then the outrange B is the value at the percentage because it's currently maxed out. So mine would be 0.26. That is what I'm gonna put down here by the outrange B. It's 0.26. Then we're gonna compile, save, add to the event graph, and then this function, the boost gauge, this one goes on the event tick. So that one goes there. And then we're gonna compile, save, and then we're gonna go and test this out. So just save everything, play the level, exit the workshop. I remember I forgot because all the images are set to hidden by default because we duplicated the boost image from the 10K image. It also inherited the hidden property. So we just need to go and switch that from the visibility from hidden to visible. Just gonna compile, save that, and then just play the level again, workshop, and then we can see there it is. Okay, so it works. We drive it. Then if we hit the boost button, it does in fact decrease. Okay, I kind of fell off there. So let's just try it out again. So we go, hit the boost, decreases once we let go, it stops and starts refilling on its own. So we hit boost again, it decreases, let go, and then refills. So then you can see that the boost does as it's intended. It decreases for as long as you're holding the button, but as soon as you let go, then it stops and automatically refills itself. But it seems as though there is a slight problem that it almost seems as though the physics only gets triggered once. So come, let's see if we can change that. Just gonna close this, head over to the parent vehicle, and then if we change this from maybe the started to the triggered, if we hit compile and then try it out now, would this be different? Let's try it. Okay, that worked, but it also sent my car into the next realm, so my physics is clearly way too much. Let's try and tone this down. Let's see, 1.04 perhaps. Okay, let's see now. Okay, there we go. Okay, my brakes are clearly not keeping up, but it did work. The car went from standstill to over 300, maybe 400 kilometers before I fell off the edge. But that is been fixed. The code works. Apparently, we should have had on the triggered, not on the started. It seems that the started only fires off once, but the triggered makes it so that it fires off for as long as you're actually holding the button. Hey, this is a post-recording insert. This is something I thought about while I was editing the video. It wasn't originally supposed to be in the tutorial series, but if you want to increase the amount of force that is delivered by the boost system with each upgrade, what you can do is by the add force, where you have the multiplier with the float, you can drag off from here and then promote this to a variable. And I'm going to call this add force amount. And then you can head over to the set boost stats. So as I said, this was not originally part of the tutorial, which is why there's no actual variable for it in the blueprint structure. So to get a little workaround for that, what I'm gonna do is before all the set variables, we're just gonna drag off, hold S, left click to create a sequence, and then just connect the execution pin. And then all these set variables, we're gonna go from the then 0 and then have that happen. And then by the then 1, what we're gonna do is we're gonna go from the break. We're gonna look for the BPS boost, select that, then we're gonna drag off from there, and then we're gonna break it, and then we're gonna add a branch. So we're gonna hold B, left click, connect this to the then 1, and then what we're gonna do is we're gonna say that if the boost is currently on stage 1, connect that as a condition. Then we're gonna take the add force amount, hold Alt, drag this in, and then we're gonna set a value to this. So for here, we're gonna set it to 1.01, right? And then if the player doesn't currently have stage 1 and instead has stage 2 or 3, we're just gonna take the branch along with the set, Control D, connect this to the false, and then we're gonna change this to maybe 1.02. Connect this condition to stage 2, and then if it's not that, then we're gonna check if it's stage 3, and then maybe this one will make it 1.04. So this is a workaround that I thought of because this wasn't originally in the tutorial series. So if you want to add additional boost to the code or additional force to the boost through the code, then this is the workaround that you would go for, because we do have the stage booleans. So you can just use those because they are set in the code depending on which stage the player has purchased. You can then use those to then determine how much force will be added each time the player purchases the next upgrade stage, or then maybe wants to reduce the amount of boost they have, and then you can just swap between all of these as the player buys or installs a different part. So that's all I wanted to add. But with that, that brings us to the end of this video, and until the next one.